Hi, welcome to Diabetes Prevention Program Session 15. This is about managing stress, right? I'm sure you can, as soon as I say the word stress, you realize immediately that it plays a role in this whole program, right? Stress has a pretty significant impact on our ability really to stay focused. That's kind of how I frame this up, right? Stress impacts our life and takes us off course, right? It's really challenging to stay focused through a long journey of lifestyle change like this. And when those stressors come in, it can really kind of send us off into left field, right field, right? But it takes us completely out of focus. Okay. One thing I want to make sure I mention, and I'm certain I'll forget by the end, is I want to give you a name, and I'm going to ask you to Google this person or enter it into YouTube. The person's name is John Kabat-Zinn, and you spell that John, last name Kabat, K-A-B-I-T, Zinn, Z-I-N, okay? I want you to look that person up because he has lots of videos that are about, deep breathing and relaxation techniques, really just giving you tools for how to help manage stress. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to make sure I gave you that name so you can look him up because there's a lot of really great content out there that he's put together, okay? So let's take a look at page 3 on your handout. And that's where I want to start. I want to talk about understanding your personal profile of stress. That is, what makes you feel stressed? How do you feel, both physically and emotionally? What do you do differently when you get stressed? Right? You need to fully understand for yourself the answers to those questions. We often think we know exactly what the answer is, right? Because we feel stress, right? When our boss is upset or stressing us, or there's a deadline at work, we know that stress. When your kids are in the middle of a sporting season and you've got to take 3 kids at 3 different places, you feel stressed. We know that. But what I want you to do is to kind of ignore what you think you know and truly ask yourself these questions to really understand for yourself. All right? Now, this occurs at a really perfect time. I have been under quite significant stress because I've been caring for a father who's gone through surgery. I've had 2 deaths in my life recently. I've had a partner who was sick and been trying to manage all that within a very small 3-week period. And I learned a lot about myself through that. I've never really had that much stress condensed into one small period. And what I found was that I had a really hard time maintaining clarity when I was talking. When I was in a conversation with someone, my mind was so distracted, I found myself having to come back and say, wait a minute, what was I saying? Right? Because we have all that stress in there and our brain's going off in different ways. I've also experienced the stress response of someone who was under extreme duress due to a death of a family member and became very ill, and there was no other explanation for it other than a stress response, right? So these things are real, right? So what I'm asking you to do is really think about how it affects you. I never knew that I could be so absent-minded or distracted until I lived through this recent period of 3-4 weeks of all that intensity. And I knew that the only answer was rest, right? And so I needed to take a day or 2 off and just lay on the couch, watch a movie, try to keep myself calm and just let my body kind of catch up with rest to get through that, okay? So spend a little bit of time with page 3, understand what your profile is. I want you to think about situations that include work, home. I've written down here, expensive car repairs, death, moving, finances, guilt, deadlines at work, worry. And in classes, I always like to talk about email, what do I call it? Email, voicemails, and text. Don't forget about that as a stressor, right? We have our smartphones now that constantly pop up with these messages. They're not always good messages, right? So just by sitting here having a great day, if I have a text message pop up right beside me, and it's bad news, that's stress, right? Don't forget that. It's kind of one of those new things in our life, right? Because, I mean, cell phones have been around for a while now, but have not always been. Okay? Now, on page 4, we've got some information about ways to prevent stress, right? Key word there is prevent, right? The best way to handle anything is to prevent it from happening in the first place. If we're able to do that successfully, we stand a much greater chance of living a lower stress life. Fair enough? So here on page 4, you can see there's quite a few different things listed. And what I want you to see, I've seen this page quite a few times compared to this is probably the first time you've seen it. And what I've started to find is that a majority of this page revolves in some way around a to-do list or time, right? We've got too many things to do and very little time to do it, okay? We become very unrealistic in the expectations of ourselves. For example, on a Saturday morning, you know, you've been waiting all week for Saturday so you could go get some of your errands taken care of, things that needed to happen. And so you have 5 things you want to do on Saturday morning, and you think you can get them done in an hour and a half. And at the end of that hour and a half, you've only accomplished 2 or 3, right? Well, the reality of that is that we were probably unrealistic in the first place of the expectation of what we could get done in that period. Well, unfortunately, the ramification of that oftentimes is it kind of stresses us a little bit because the to-dos remain on the to-do list. And as long as they remain on the to-do list, we feel a little bit of oppression by, I've got all these things to do, okay? So in that way, you know, we're talking about to-do lists and being realistic and making sure you do things in appropriate time, okay? Saying no when asked to do something you don't want to do, or saying no to doing something even though you know that it really needs to be done, but you have to put yourself into the priority position and say, that's just going to have to wait because there's nothing more important than me taking care of myself right now and reducing this stress level. Because if I don't do that, I can either end up sick, I can end up behind at work because I just can't focus, all those kind of things, right? And then the long-term stress, those ramifications are far worse, right? We end up with greater risk for heart disease, okay? Heart attacks. Share workload with others if that's possible. Set goals you can reach in a realistic time. Take charge of your own time. I think one thing I've observed when I see take charge of your time, one thing I've observed is that a lot of times people don't recognize that they can be doing things a different way by asking other people in the household to help, right? We get into these situations, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, where we have defined roles. These are the things that we do. I have always done them. It doesn't even occur to me that I should or that I could ask someone else to help spread the load, right? So I want you to think about that. You know, a lot of times men don't do the dishes or don't do the laundry, and women tend to do that. But it doesn't have to be that way, right? I appeal to you to don't just follow through with the same task that you've always done just because. Actually recognize that, no, there could be a different way to do this, right? So take charge of your time, and if you don't have enough time to manage through your daily responsibilities, consider how you could ask a partner in the household or a child in the household or a friend to help spread the load a little bit, okay? I know that sounds kind of simple, but I often get a lot of looks where people say, you know, that's right. I never really even think there's a possibility. Why would I ask? Well, you never know unless you ask for a little bit of help, okay? Planning ahead is here. Keeping things in perspective remembering your purpose, right? And reaching out to other people for support. So all of these ways to prevent stress, each of you have to individually look through here and think about how that might impact, or which of these might be impactful for your life, okay? Let me make sure. Yes, okay, so page 5, when you cannot avoid stress is the title of this. It's a fact of life. We cannot avoid all stress. A lot of times we just don't even know that it's coming and it pops out of nowhere, all right? But to that point, I want you to recognize that that's true, right? Sometimes we get phone calls from a boss, says, hey, I'm gonna need you to do this project and I need it done by X date. You had no idea that was coming. Or, you know, bad things in life where there are accidents or illnesses that pop out of nowhere and you have to go handle them. So make sure you have a plan for those things. You know they're coming. You know, we say they came out of nowhere and we had no idea. But the reality is, we know stressors are gonna come, we just don't know when. But we can still have a plan ready so that when it does happen, it's not as big of a stressor as it could be, right? Here on the page, it says, you know, catch the stress early, right? And that's helped by having the profile of stress for yourself on page 3, right? If you know what that looks like, you know, what situations or how do you feel physically and mentally, you're able to better catch stress early and put a plan of action into place, all right? I like the second box on page 5 where it says take a 10-minute timeout. This is where I gave you the name Jon Kabat-Zinn, because he's the one who has some of these tools, like taking a 10-minute timeout, counting to 100, doing deep breathing exercises, doing guided imagery. So for example, one of the videos that I know Jon Kabat-Zinn has is guided imagery. And it's simply in a soothing, soft, low stress voice. He's able to just kind of guide you through relaxation techniques, right? And it's just, you know, kind of sit very neutral with your hands flat on a table and your feet flat. Start paying attention to your breath. Start breathing from your belly. Once you go through a minute or two of that and you start to calm down, he'll ask you to start thinking about one of your favorite places or a very relaxing place. If you're a beach person, you think about the water. If you're a mountain person, you're thinking about the mountains, that kind of thing, right? And over a 10-minute period of trying to keep your mind quiet and focused in on one thing, like your breath, you're able to quiet all of the noise that's happening in your brain. And you're able to just kind of be, right? Now, I know for some of you that may be kind of odd, right? It's an alternative type of procedure, but I do highly encourage you to try it at least once. I've always been fascinated with how different I feel in such a very quick period of time after doing something like this, right? And I always tell people, at times it feels almost like a levitation. After you quiet your mind and you really relax, kind of get the heart rate down, blood pressure down, and you're just really calm, it just kind of feels like you can, you know, kind of just float a little bit because the pressure of all that mind noise is gone. And most of that mind noise is always derived from stressors in your life, right? So the more we can quiet those down, the better off we're going to be, right? So I really want you to take a look at that. And then you also see at the bottom of page 5, we've got move those muscles. As always, physical activity is always going to be at the top of the list of what can you do to help any form of health situation, any form of stress situation, right? The more you're able to exercise and get oxygen delivered to your brain and get oxygen delivered into the cells of the body, the better you're going to feel, right? It's going to be very comforting to the body. And it's going to make sure that everything's happening internally as best as it can so that it's not an additional source of stress, Pamper yourself. We do not do that nearly enough. And truly, I think we should be making time every day to have some form of time cut out for ourselves, even if that's just to take a bath or 10 minutes to do any form of a meditation, right? It's very important. And then breathing. There's lots of research out there that just taking 5 deep breaths or going through 10 minutes of deep breathing all have tremendous impacts on mood state, right? Because we deliver a lot of oxygen to the brain and it just kind of wakens us up, right? So even as little as 5 controlled, deep, thoughtful breaths can really kind of turn around your mood in a very quick period of time, right? So take a look at this, pages 4 and 5, and use that when you're putting together an action plan here on page 7. All right. I'm going to go ahead and skip over page 6. I want you to read through there for anything that maybe you are personally dealing with in terms of the stress related to our program. It's certainly realistic, right? We're doing additional things in our life which could be stressful. We know we should be exercising. We know we should be eating healthier at every meal, and we're human. So we're not 100% at that, but when we're not 100%, that opens up a window for stress. Okay, so take a look at page 6 as well. And then I really want you to use page 7 to come up with an action plan. Remember how I said the more prepared you are for that time when stressors pop up, the better off you're going to be at handling them and not allowing stress to get you out of focus on your journey. Your number one priority in life is this journey of trying to create lifestyle change. So give yourself the gift of being ready for the next stressor that's going to pop up and allow yourself this time to maintain focus through it. Okay? And that is all I have for session 15. I thank you very much.